I paid for half the wedding, only to be told the photos were just for the young people. So I made sure there was no honeymoon. Don single quotes to forget to subscribe and comment where you're watching from. I felt the tremor in my right hand as I sorted through the financial statements. Quickly, I slid it beneath the desk, pressing it against my silk pants until the shaking eased. Early Parkinson's, my secret mom, we're here. Thomas called from the dining room. I slipped the folder marked Richard International Correspondence into my drawer. My ex-husband's ghost could wait. Sunday dinner had become a battleground of quiet ambition. Thomas, my eldest at 47, sat across from me. Rebecca, 44, tapped her manicured nails against her water glass. Both were executives at Wright Interiors, the design firm I had built after Richard abandoned us with 3 small children and a mountain of debt. I have news. Amber burst in, my youngest, 32, still clinging to her free spirit image. Seth proposed. She thrust her hand forward, the diamond flashing. Congratulations, I said, deliberately ignoring the look Thomas and Rebecca exchanged. Seth Miller was 30, a history teacher with limited ambition. We're thinking June. Nothing too extravagant. I'll cover half the expenses, I offered, watching Thomas silently calculate what that might cost the company. That's generous, Amber replied, her enthusiasm not quite reaching her eyes. Though you don't need to trouble yourself with the details. Nonsense. I want to be involved. Annoyance flickered across her face. After dessert, Amber excused herself. She left her phone behind. I picked it up to return it when a message lit the screen. The old woman offered to pay for half. This will be easier than we thought. Another followed immediately. Don't worry about the budget. The old bat won't question anything as long as she feels included. My fingers tightened around the phone. Carefully, I placed it back where it had been. In my office. I pulled out Richard's folder postcards sent from across Europe over decades, addressed to our children. I studied them differently now, noting dates and postmarks. If I needed allies against my own flesh and blood, perhaps I should turn to the ghost of my past. Is that what you're wearing, Mom? Amber didn't bother hiding her disapproval as I entered the restaurant. 6 flights of stairs had left me breathless. The tremor was worse today, even after doubling my medication. The elevator's out, I explained, choosing the seat farthest from everyone. No one had mentioned it was a 6th-floor venue with no elevator when the last-minute invitation arrived. Such a shame. Diane Miller cooed, her sympathy sharp with poison. At 55, she was 20 years younger than Mia. Fact Seth had made sure to emphasize before. Eleanor, we've already selected the appetizers, Seth said. Hope you don't mind. We know you're busy with the company. I smiled pleasantly. They'd crafted a story where I was both too important for details and too feeble for decisions. I was thinking of wearing navy blue to the ceremony. I said, Mom, please. Amber scoffed. Navy is so funerary. Don't you want something more lively? I don't want to look like I'm trying too hard or like a corpse, she muttered, just loud enough for me to hear. That night, I found my Parkinson's medication in the trash, replaced with similar-looking vitamins. When I confronted Amber, she denied it and suggested maybe I was confused because of my age. Later, while she was out, I checked her laptop. Her search history told me everything. Early dementia symptoms. How fast does Parkinson's affect the brain? Legal guardianship of elderly parent from the safe in my closet. I retrieved a notebook and began documenting everything. My phone rang. Thomas, Mom, I'm concerned about these wedding expenses. Amber's budget is excessive. She deserves a beautiful wedding, I replied, testing him. Are you sure you're thinking clearly about this? It's nearly triple what we spent on Rebecca's wedding. Are you questioning my judgment, Thomas? After the call, I stared at my reflection. The woman looking back had survived her husband's betrayal 40 years ago. She had built an empire while raising 3 children alone. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Jackson, it's Ilana, right? I need your services again. Quietly. It's a historic property in Westbrook Heights, Seth explained later, projecting photos of a Victorian mansion onto my living room wall. 4 bedrooms, original woodwork. And how much are they asking? I asked, though I already knew homes there started at $3 million. We were hoping you might consider it an investment, Amber said carefully, for the family's future. I see, I said, and your teaching salary will cover the taxes and maintenance. Well, Seth hesitated. We thought you'd handle those as well. Later that week, I met former Detective Jackson Monroe at a quiet coffee shop far from my usual routines. Seth Miller isn't who he says he is, Jackson said. sliding a folder across the table. Through my contacts with fraud investigators in several states, I discovered his real name is Samuel Miller. He's targeted wealthy families before twice that I can confirm. He gets close to a family member, pushes for marriage, drains assets, then disappears. Inside the folder were photographs of Seth with two different women. Both looked unsettlingly like Amber. Same vulnerability, same hopeful smile. What about my children? I asked. My team has been thorough, Jackson replied. Thomas has a gambling problem. He's been siphoning company funds for 3 years. He showed me bank statements, irregular transfers, carefully disguised. And Rebecca, he continued, is being blackmailed. By whom? Thomas. She had an affair with a major client. He has proof. I absorbed it in silence. Decades of business negotiations had trained me to keep my face calm, even as the knife twisted in my chest. What about Richard? I asked finally. Still in Zurich, working as a financial consultant. He's sick, cancer. That evening, I found Rebecca alone in the conference room, hurriedly wiping tears. Is everything all right? I asked gently. Of course, she said quickly. Just tired. Her hands shook as she gathered her papers. Rebecca, if someone is pressuring you, please. Mom, she whispered, panic flooding her eyes. I can't talk about it. Thomas has. It would ruin everything. Back home, I examined Richard's most recent postcard. The message itself was harmless, but on the back was a phone number I'd never called. I stared at it for a long moment, then dialed. After 3 rings, a voice answered. Hello, Richard, it's Eleanor. I believe we need to talk. I'm sorry, Mrs. Wright, the wedding planner said later, unable to meet my eyes. Your name has been removed from the guest list. I blinked. Removed? Ms. Amber was very specific about keeping the wedding youthful and contemporary. I scanned the list. 20 of my oldest friends, business partners, allies, people who had stood by me for decades, had been cut. I see, I said calmly. And who's paying for these contemporary guests? The planner flushed. I'm not privy to the financial arrangements. Amber swept in moments later. Mom, I didn't expect you today. Clearly, I said. I was just learning about the revised guest list. We needed space for people who'll actually enjoy the celebration, she said dismissively. Your friends would be bored. My friends built multi-million-dollar companies, I replied. They won't be bored by your DJ. This is why I didn't consult you. Amber snapped. You make everything about business. This is my day. Funded by my business, I reminded her. And since I've agreed to cover more than my promised half to ensure quality, I have final say on all arrangements. Amber paled slightly, recognizing the threat beneath my calm tone. Later that week, I met with my neurologist and brought a sample of the tampered medication. This is disturbing, she said. The substitution could have significantly accelerated your symptoms. I'll need documentation, I told her. Medical proof of tampering and confirmation of my mental competence. As I left her office, my phone rang. Eleanor, said Martin Reynolds, my former accountant. Something's wrong with the company financials. There have been large transfers to offshore accounts over the past 4 months. How much? Nearly 7 million. The signatures look like yours, but they're forgeries. I know, I said. Can you trace the destinations? That afternoon, I arrived at the bakery for the cake tasting. Inside, Amber, Seth, and Diane were already sampling flavors. Mom, we didn't think you'd make it, Amber said with forced cheer. I felt the tremor start in my right hand, stronger than usual. I reached for a sample plate, but the shaking intensified, sending it crashing to the floor. Couldn't you have stayed home? Amber hissed. You're ruining everything, like always. Rebecca, arriving just then, froze. Amber, she said sharply, apologize to Mom right now. Why? Amber snapped. So we can pretend she's not falling apart. Look at her. That night, I called Richard again. The Swiss account, I said without preamble. Is it still active? Yes, he replied. I've maintained it. It's grown substantially. I'll need access immediately. The private jet landed in Zurich 2 days later. I told my family I was seeking specialized treatment in New York. Technically true. Just not the kind of treatment they imagined. Richard waited in a private lounge, thinner and more fragile than I remembered. Cancer had hollowed out his once handsome face. You look well, Eleanor, he said, standing slowly. Save the pleasantries, I replied. Show me the accounts. He nodded and unlocked a leather portfolio. The numbers were staggering. Nearly $40 million accumulated over 40 years. Why? I asked. Why build this and never tell me? Would you have accepted it after the way I left? He asked quietly. Then he added, Thomas contacted me 3 years ago. He said he wanted to reconnect, but his questions kept drifting toward finances. And you told him about the account? I asked. Never, Richard replied. I may have been a terrible husband, but I'm not entirely without principles. Back in Connecticut, I called Martin Reynolds. I need you back, I said, officially retired but quietly restructuring everything. You found something in Switzerland? He asked. I found leverage. Over the next week, I implemented what Martin called the ghost structure complex, reorganization that appeared to consolidate power while actually dispersing critical assets into a new holding company controlled exclusively by me. I reclaimed old allies. Harold Chen, pushed into early retirement by Thomas, eagerly joined my shadow board. Maria Vasquez, whose acquisition offer Thomas had dismissed with arrogance, became a silent partner. At the same time, I cultivated the appearance of decline. I missed appointments, asked Thomas to repeat explanations, appeared confused in meetings. With every mistake, I watched my children exchange knowing glances, their trap tightening around prey that was, in truth, the hunter. Jackson Monroe continued his investigation. He uncovered more of predatory history and documented Thomas's growing gambling debts. Most disturbing were the emails between Thomas and a Chinese manufacturing conglomerate discussing the acquisition and dismantling of Wright Interiors. Amber burst into my study one afternoon, unusually animated. Mom, Seth and I were thinking, what if we extended the honeymoon? There's this incredible private villa in Bora Bora. I smiled indulgently. Whatever makes you happy, sweetheart. We'd need to upgrade to the platinum package, she added casually. It's only an extra 40,000. Consider it done, I said, watching her fail to hide her excitement. I'll handle all the Bora Bora arrangements personally. After she left, I called my neurologist. I need those cognitive assessment results expedited, I said, and sent directly to my attorney. To the bride, crystal glasses clinked at the rehearsal dinner. I smiled appropriately, though I'd been seated far from the main wedding party. Amber looked radiant, accepting congratulations with practiced ease. I watched her interact with Seth's family, especially Diane, who had seamlessly assumed the role of mother of the bride after knowing Amber for barely 6 months. Eleanor, aren't you proud? A distant cousin asked, settling beside me. Her voice carried that now familiar tone of careful sympathy. Your baby girl getting married? Immensely, I replied, taking a measured sip of water. Then, with deliberate confusion, I added, though I can't quite recall that we finalized the table arrangements. Oh, that was done weeks ago, she said gently. Was it? I laughed softly. My memory isn't what it used to be. Several nearby conversations paused. The cousin patted my hand with condescension. Don't worry about a thing, she said. Everyone understands. I noticed Thomas watching with barely concealed satisfaction, already calculating how to use this later. Rebecca, however, looked genuinely stricken. After dinner, Amber approached me holding an envelope. Mom, about tomorrow's ceremony. We made a small change to the program. Inside was the revised order of events. The traditional mother of a bus speech had been reassigned to Diane. We thought it would be less stressful for you, Amber said, avoiding my eyes. Diane has experience with public speaking. How thoughtful, I replied evenly, despite the deliberate humiliation, though I'd prepared some remarks. You can still say something at the rehearsal brunch, she offered dismissively. It'll be more intimate. Later, I overheard Seth whispering to someone nearby. The old lady's losing it. Perfect timing. Once we're back from Bora Bora, the lawyers take over. I slipped away unnoticed and returned home, where Jackson was waiting. Everything's set, he reported. Financial controls are locked down. The ghost structure is active but invisible. Your Swiss funds have been transferred into secure accounts. He paused, then added, and the Bora Bora honeymoon is fully cancelable, by you alone. The resort manager's been briefed to expect your call. All reservations are in your name, just as you instructed. I nodded, reviewing the file. He'd compiled a comprehensive record of betrayal by my own children. What about Rebecca? I asked quietly. Thomas has explicit photos of her with the client, Jackson said. He's threatening her marriage and professional reputation. That night, I placed 3 envelopes into my purse, each bearing one of my children's names. Inside each was the same statement: the price of loyalty isn't paid in money. The Newport estate gleamed beneath perfect blue skies, a venue purchased with my money, and selected without my input. I arrived early, watching staff arrange flowers worth more than most people's monthly salaries. Mrs. Wright, the coordinator said nervously, we weren't expecting you until later. I'm just observing, I assured her. Don't mind me. The ceremony was flawless. Amber radiant, Seth attentive. I sat in the front row, as protocol demanded, though I noticed the photographer carefully angling shots to minimize my presence. Ellen, you must be so happy, Diane gushed during the reception line. Though these events can be exhausting at our age, she added. Our ages differ by 20 years. Diane, I replied pleasantly. The photographer interrupted. Family photos on the terrace in 5 minutes. When I arrived, the photographer was arranging Seth's extended family. Perfect. Now, just the younger generation, please. I stood there as different combinations of the bridal party were photographed. Eventually, Amber approached me, her smile tight and rehearsed. Mom, why don't you rest? These are just shots of our friends. We'll do some with you later. The dismissal was deliberate and public. Several guests looked away, embarrassed on my behalf. Of course, I replied calmly, retreating to a nearby bench where Jackson, posing as a business associate, took a seat beside me. It's all documented, he murmured. Every slight, every manipulation. I nodded, watching Amber laugh and pose among her stylish friends. And the financial transfers are complete. Jackson continued quietly. The ghost structure now holds legal majority ownership of Wright Interiors. Thomas's access codes were revoked an hour ago, without alerting him. During the reception, I was seated at a distant table with elderly relatives. Safely removed from any meaningful conversation, I played my part well, appearing slightly confused when addressed directly. The moment that sealed their fate came during Amber's speech. Champagne glass raised, she thanked everyone profusely and then added, almost as an afterthought, and my mother, for her generous financial support. The room went uncomfortably silent at the dismissive tone. Later, Rebecca approached my table. Mom, that wasn't right, what Amber said. When you're ready to talk about what Thomas has over you, I told her quietly, I'll be ready to listen. She nodded, eyes glistening. Monday morning, I added, my house, 9 o'clock. As the celebration reached its peak, I approached the newlyweds. I wanted to give you something special, I said warmly. Check your email. All the details for your Bora Bora honeymoon are there: the presidential villa, private beach, personal chef, everything arranged and paid in full. Amber's eyes lit up with genuine excitement. Mom, that's incredible. I left shortly afterward, pleading fatigue. In the car, I made the call. I had been rehearsing Bora Bora, Royal Resort. This is Eleanor Wright. I need to cancel a reservation. What do you mean, cancelled? Amber's voice later reached a pitch I hadn't heard since her teenage tantrums. She stood in my living room, still wearing yesterday's travel clothes, makeup smeared from frustrated tears. Seth paced behind her, his face dark with rage. We were at the check-in counter when they told us, Amber shouted. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? I regarded them calmly from my armchair. Almost as humiliating, I said evenly, as being told the wedding photos were only for the young people. This is about the photo arrangements. Amber snapped. Seriously, Mom? No, I replied. This is about conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted medical manipulation, and plotting to have me declared mentally incompetent. The color drained from both their faces. I don't know what you're talking about, Seth said quickly. Amber, your mother is confused again. Am I? I reached for a folder beside my chair. Samuel Miller, that's your real name, isn't it? I said calmly. Or do you prefer Sam, like you did with Patricia Goldstein in Seattle, before you emptied her bank accounts? He froze, eyes flicking instinctively toward the door. And you, Amber, I continued. I have documented evidence of your tampering with my medication, a felony offense, I should mention. The doorbell rang. That will be Thomas and Rebecca, I said, right on time. My older children entered, Thomas irritated, Rebecca visibly nervous. What's this emergency meeting about, Mother? Thomas demanded. Your meeting with Hanson Global was cancelled an hour ago, I replied, permanently after they received documentation of your gambling debts and your embezzlement from company accounts. Thomas staggered as if struck. You can't. Oh, but I have. I gestured to the sofa. All of you, sit down. For months, I continued, you've conspired to remove me from my own company, a company I built from nothing while raising you alone. Thanks to Jackson's surveillance team and Martin's financial expertise, every conversation has been recorded, every transaction traced, and every step of your plan documented. The front door opened again as Martin Reynolds entered with my attorney. Everything has been executed as instructed. Eleanor, Martin said, the new corporate structure is now public record. Wright Interiors is now controlled by the Eleanor Wright Foundation. My attorney explained, your mother retains majority voting rights. Your executive positions are terminated effective immediately. I handed an envelope to each of my children. Thomas, I said, you will enter treatment for gambling addiction. You'll work under supervision for 5 years before any consideration of reinstatement, and you will repay every dollar you stole. He said nothing. Rebecca, you were coerced, but still complicit. You'll retain your position, under supervision, with mandatory ethics counseling. She nodded, tears falling. And Ember, Seth, you face the most serious consequences. Seth, you have 24 hours to annul this marriage and leave the state tour. I press charges for your prior frauds. He swallowed hard. Amber, I finished quietly. You will face the consequences of your choices without financial support for the first time in your life. Amber began crying in earnest. Mom, please, the medication tampering alone could result in criminal charges. I reminded her calmly. Consider this mercy. Seth stood up abruptly. This is insane. I'm leaving. You've confused love with entitlement for far too long, I said quietly to my children. That ends today. The silence inside Wright Interior's executive suite was deafening as I entered for the first time in months. Employees watched wide-eyed as I walked toward the conference room, where the board of directors was already assembled. Gentlemen, ladies, I greeted them evenly. I believe we have several pressing matters to address. Harold Chen, restored as CFO, distributed folders filled with comprehensive documentation, detailing Thomas's financial manipulations, along with the remediation plan. As you can see, I explained, the situation is serious, but manageable. The diverted funds have been traced, and recovery proceedings are already underway. Where is Thomas? Asked Bernard Williams, our longest-serving board member. Addressing personal matters, I replied diplomatically. He'll be returning in a different capacity after appropriate intervention. The restructuring passed with unanimous approval. By noon, new security protocols were in place, access codes changed, and Thomas's personal effects removed from the executive office. Rebecca found me there later. She looked shaken, but resolved. Thomas discovered the affair 2 years ago, she said quietly. It was brief, stupid, a moment of weakness during a business trip. She swallowed. He threatened to tell Stephen and release photos to the board unless I supported his decisions and Amber's involvement. She's always been jealous of your relationship with Thomas and me. She hesitated. When Seth came along, she changed. He unlocked something darker in her. Suddenly she and Thomas were coordinating, talking about expediting your retirement by having me declared incompetent. Yes, she whispered. I should have warned you. You should have trusted me. I corrected gently. That evening, I visited Thomas at his apartment. He opened the door, looking haggard, days of stubble shadowing his jaw. Have you come to gloat? He asked bitterly. I've come to understand, I said. When did the gambling start? After Melissa left. Small bets at first, then bigger ones, trying to chase the losses. And contacting your father. I was desperate. The debts kept growing. The loan sharks were making threats. Why not come to me? I asked the question that had haunted me for months, and admit failure to Eleanor Wright. His laugh was hollow. The woman who never fails at anything. Besides, you were getting older, starting to shake. It seemed convenient. Across town, Amber faced her own reckoning. Seth had left that morning, taking the BMW I'd gifted them, and leaving behind only a terse note about irreconcilable family complications. She arrived at my door near midnight. Mascara streaked her cheeks. He's gone, she said, simply. I know. I stepped aside and let her in. Jackson confirmed he crossed into New York State 3 hours ago. I handed her a printed rental agreement for a modest apartment across town, along with information for an entry-level position at a local gallery. 3 months' rent is paid, I said. After that, you're on your own. She stared at the papers. Why help me at all after what I did? Because you're my daughter, I replied, and everyone deserves one chance at redemption. Only one. The Wright Interiors Foundation is proud to announce its inaugural grants program for women entrepreneurs over 50, I said from the podium, my voice steady despite the weight of the moment. 6 months had passed since the wedding disaster. This press conference marked both a corporate rebirth and a personal declaration. Flashes lit the room as reporters documented the company's unexpected pivot. In the front row sat Rebecca, now effectively serving as coup under the new structure. Her path to redemption had been the clearest, genuine remorse, translated into relentless work rebuilding both company systems and her own integrity. After the announcement, I returned to my office, where Jackson Monroe waited with his final report. Thomas has completed 3 months of intensive treatment, he said. His therapist reports real progress. He attends Gamblers Anonymous daily and works consistently in the purchasing department. And Amber, struggling but persisting. She's made every rent payment since your support ended. The gallery job pays minimum wage, but her supervisor says she shows up on time and works hard. Any contact with Seth? None, since he crossed into Canada 2 months ago. Our sources believe he's trying to establish a new identity in Vancouver. That evening, I visited the small gallery where Amber worked. I watched through the window as she patiently explained a local artist's work to an elderly couple. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple black pants and a button-down shirt. I entered just as the couple left. Surprising her mid-cleanup mom, she said, wariness replacing hostility. Progress, of a sort. The Morrison exhibition is impressive, I said, studying a landscape. She raised an eyebrow. You came to see art. Her skepticism was justified. I actually came to see you, I said. Professional curiosity. Jackson tells me you haven't missed a single day of work. You're still having me watched, Amber said. There was resignation in her voice now, not anger. Monitored, I corrected gently. There's a difference. She finished closing the register before answering. I don't have a choice but to work. My credit is ruined. My friends disappeared when the money did. And my husband turned out to be a professional con artist. All true, I acknowledged. How does that feel? She let out a short, bitter laugh. Terrible. Humiliating. Then she paused, her expression shifting, clarifying. How so? I've never earned anything myself before, she admitted. Not really. Last week, I sold a painting to that couple. She nodded toward the door. A $5,000 commission. My cut was small, but I made that sale happen. Me, not your money, not your connections. I nodded, recognizing the fragile pride beneath her words. I'm having dinner at the cafe across the street, I said. You're welcome to join me when you finish here. She looked startled. Why would you want to have dinner with me after everything I did? Because healing has to start somewhere, I replied. And because I've never actually known who you are without the trappings of wealth. As we parted, she hesitated, then asked quietly, will we ever be okay as a family? That depends on all of us, I said. Trust isn't restored through words or time alone. Only consistent actions rebuild what's been broken. The test results are excellent, Dr. Patel said later, reviewing my neurological evaluation. The Parkinson's is progressing much more slowly than we initially feared. Your quick return to proper medication minimized the damage from those months of tampering. I nodded, relief settling in, and the long-term prognosis. With continued treatment, you should maintain good functionality for many years. 1 year had passed since the wedding. Thomas, now in his first year of recovery, worked diligently in a mid-level position. Rebecca flourished once free from blackmail, becoming my right hand in the company. Amber, after facing serious legal consequences I'd helped mitigate, was slowly building a legitimate career at the art gallery. That evening, I welcomed my children into my home for a private dinner, our first gathering without tension in years. Thomas arrived carrying his sobriety chip, marking 1 full year clean. Rebecca brought framed family photographs for the memorial garden we'd created for Richard. Amber came with a small wrapped package. Inside was a silver bracelet, nearly identical to one Richard had given me for our 5th anniversary, lost decades ago during our frantic move after his abandonment. It's not the same one, Amber said quickly, but when I saw it, I remembered you wearing it in old photos. The thoughtfulness spoke volumes about how far she had come. I've been thinking about what happened, Thomas said later, as we moved into the living room for coffee, about why we all made the choices we did. We never really talked about it. He took a breath. I talk about my actions in recovery meetings, but not with the people I hurt most. Yes, I was desperate because of gambling debts, but there was something deeper, a belief that I deserved success without earning it, that my name entitled me to wealth and power. I felt that too, Amber said quietly, like the company owed me a lifestyle. though I contributed nothing. Rebecca studied her hands. I was different. I worked hard. I proved myself, but I was too afraid of losing everything to stand up against what I knew was wrong. I listened as my children named the dysfunctions that had nearly destroyed our family. And me, I asked finally, what was my role in creating this? They exchanged surprised glances. You were always so capable, Rebecca said carefully, so completely in control. It created a standard that felt impossible to reach. You survived being abandoned with 3 kids by becoming superhuman, Amber added. I always felt I could never measure up, so why even try? I absorbed their words, recognizing the truth in each of them. We all contributed to what happened, I said, and we all have roles in what happens next. 2 years after Amber's ill-fitted wedding, I stood at the podium in Wright Interior's newly renovated headquarters, addressing employees, industry leaders, and the press. Today marks not only the 40th anniversary of Wright Interiors, I began, but a renewal of our founding principles. My voice was steady, despite the milestone birthday I'd celebrated just weeks earlier. At 77, I had entered an unexpected new chapter far from the quiet retirement I once imagined. 4 decades ago, I continued, I founded this company as a recently abandoned mother of 3, armed with little more than determination. Today, we launched the Eleanor Wright Mentorship Initiative, pairing experienced professionals with emerging talent, regardless of age or background. In the front row sat Thomas, now managing our Western regional operations after 18 months of consistent performance. Beside him was Rebecca, officially named President of Operations the previous quarter, and near the back stood Amber by her own requests, seeking no special treatment. Even after everything we had rebuilt together, experience isn't obsolescence, I continued. It's our greatest untapped resource in business and in life. Later, I welcomed my children into my home for a quiet celebration. Thomas arrived, carrying his 2-year sobriety chip. Rebecca brought champagne for everyone except Thomas, who had sparkling cider. Amber came straight from work at the gallery, where she'd recently been promoted to assistant curator. As evening settled in, we moved into the garden. A small marble bench stood there, commemorating Richard not as the perfect husband or father he never was, but as the flawed man whose choices had shaped all our lives. To new beginnings, I said, lifting my glass beneath the summer stars, and to hard-earned wisdom. My children raised their glasses with me. Our reflections shimmered in the garden pond, 4 figures, distinct yet connected, separate yet undeniably part of the same whole. The Wright family had imploded spectacularly. We had hurt one another in ways that could never be fully undone. But from those ruins, something honest had emerged, a family built on truth rather than appearances, on earned respect instead of obligation. I touched the silver bracelet on my wrist. It wasn't the original, but in many ways it meant more, chosen with care by a daughter who had finally learned to see beyond herself. Some treasures are lost forever, others are replaced by something different, but just as valuable, and some, like the wisdom earned through suffering, can never be gained any other way. The price of loyalty, I realized, was never measured in money. It was paid in truth, in difficult choices, and in the courage to begin again after everything falls apart. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.